In the past 3 days, we've traveled more than 3,000 miles, and we've seen as many sights. I'm moved by the things I have heard, and I plan to return to Washington with a story for the President about the new America people are helping to build.
On September 20th, 1967, the First Lady boarded a chartered jet to begin a 4-day tour that would take her to 7 Midwestern states. Accompanying Mrs. Johnson in the official party were Special Presidential Assistant on the Arts and Mrs. Roger Stevens, Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, Robert Weaver, Secretary of Agriculture and Mrs. Orville Freeman, and the wife of the Vice President, Mrs. Hubert Humphrey. Mrs. Johnson had a twofold purpose in making the trip. She wanted to see firsthand just what is happening in America's heartland as a result of great society programs, especially in urban renewal and the arts. The First Lady also planned to emphasize some of the benefits of rural living and the need to reverse the population trend toward overcrowded urban centers. Arriving at the Watertown, South Dakota airport, Mrs. Johnson received a warm welcome from young and old alike. The official party's first stop was Brookside Manor in Montevideo, Minnesota. Brookside Manor is a new senior citizens project funded by a federal government loan. From there, Mrs. Johnson took a stroll along the downtown mall with Mayor George Anderson, viewing the results of Montevideo's ambitious urban renewal program and greeting the friendly crowd of almost 10,000 which had turned out to see her. Montevideo was one of the nation's many small towns that faced extinction until its city fathers took advantage of federal urban renewal funds.
There are 17,000 towns across the country with less than 6,000 people, but I'm especially glad to come to this one because Montevideo has taken action, which makes it an example to others. Over the past few years, the fact of American life has been that the traffic was all one way into the city. One thing my husband has been striving for is to give Americans a choice once they had to go to the cities for jobs, amenities, entertainment. If these things are available in small towns, might not some of the traffic of people be reversed? And so I salute you for making your own place on the map secure, for refusing to give up, and for rolling out such a gay fiesta carpet that says for all who come this way, welcome to Montevideo, a good place to live.
Next stop, Waverly, Minnesota, and the lakefront residence of Vice President and Mrs. Humphrey, where the First Lady was treated to an inspection tour of the Minnesota Society of Fine Arts Artmobile and the Hennepin County Bookmobile, both of which service Waverly. Some homemade ice cream and pastries provided the ingredients for a reception in the First Lady's honor. This was a pleasant respite from the heavy schedule ahead as Mrs. Johnson and the rest of the official party relaxed on the Humphreys' lawn. On to Minneapolis and Nicollet Mall, another federal urban renewal project nearing completion, where the First Lady would dedicate the H.C. Richardson Memorial Fountain.
Minnesota stands tall in the nation's capital. The Humphreys and the Freemans play a vital role in our national life. And I can see after traveling across this state why it is that they're such remarkable people. But I came here more to see than to talk. So I just want to salute the Downtown Council for its hard work and creative imagination which germinated and generated this downtown area, and to dedicate one part of it, a fountain designed by Larry Halprin. A fountain is very right in any city's return to greater life, for water itself is a symbol of life. And so I think it is meaningful here that this artistic fountain is designed to draw people downtown, not just to find a place to shop, but a place for joy.
There was an early departure the next morning for the 90-minute flight to Quincy, Illinois. Mrs. Johnson was welcomed by Mayor and Mrs. Wes Olson and practically the entire population. The First Lady received a memento of the occasion, a replica of an antique paddle wheel steamship, the Lady Bird. At Quincy, Mrs. Johnson embarked on an authentic Mississippi towboat ride that would take her to Hannibal, Missouri, the home of Mark Twain. Along the way, Mrs. Johnson was serenaded by the great River Barbershop Chorus. On the boat, the First Lady enjoyed a luncheon of Mississippi catfish and other local delicacies, and listened to the music of Bing Crosby's old accompanist, Perry Bodkin. Arriving in Hannibal, Mrs. Johnson was greeted by Tom Sawyer and Becky Thatcher and met an enthusiastic crowd of well-wishers before traveling to the Mark Twain home.
My coming here today fulfills a lifelong yearning to see the world of Tom Sawyer and his friends. For Mark Twain molded of them not only symbols of happy, carefree childhood, but examples of youngsters facing the realities of life. His strength was his simplicity. He told the story of the adventuring American child and a river, and with it, he produced an honest description about the pain and the glory of being alive as an American child. And may I say to all who come this way, you will have the enchantment of discovering once more something of your own childhood.
From Hannibal, the First Lady traveled to Columbus, Indiana, called by many people the Athens of the Prairie. Here, Mrs. Johnson viewed the creations of internationally acclaimed architects, brought to Columbus largely through the efforts of one man, business leader J. Irwin Miller. That evening, Mr. Miller accompanied the First Lady to a performance of the opera Falstaff given by the American National Opera Company. There possibly could not have been a more beautiful place to sense the natural splendor that is America than the Sylvania Recreation Area in Ironwood, Michigan, which the First Lady officially opened the following morning.
What a magnificent part of the world this is, and our drive here this morning prepared us for what we see. Surely it was a place such as this that Byron had in mind when he wrote, "There is a pleasure in the pathless woods, there is a rapture on the lonely shore, there is society where none intrudes, by the deep sea and music in its roar. I love not man the less, but nature more." The woods and streams have been called nature's own cathedral, and in dedicating them, therefore, for the use of the nation, we again ask the Lord's blessing as he bestowed it upon our beautiful land.
The First Lady was especially gratified by the contributions of young men from the Ojibwe Job Corps Conservation Center, and thanked several of them for their role in the development of Sylvania. Wherever the First Lady traveled, there were the inevitable throngs of smiling faces, and only an occasional tear. From Ironwood, the official party flew to Avoca, Wisconsin, and the Big Little Hill Farm. Here, the First Lady met another Johnson family, the Joseph Johnsons. Johnson, his wife, and 5 children have been operating their 400-acre dairy farm in the black, thanks in part to loans and credit from the Farmers Home Administration and other government agencies. That evening, Mrs. Johnson attended a revival of Hodag by the Idea Theater of the University of Wisconsin.
Hodag! Step right up! Step right up! It's stupefying! Hodag! 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 Unlikely soon our world will feel the rain with what's the name of Hodag! Exploded Hodag!
The First Lady spent the night, at the invitation of Wisconsin Governor and Mrs. Warren Knowles, at the Governor's Mansion in Madison. Then it was off to Mrs. Johnson's final stop, the Dane County Coliseum, and a youth forum presented by the World Food Exposition.
Years ago, President Franklin Roosevelt spoke in moving words about the future of America. I have seen it coming true in the past 3 days in Minnesota, in Michigan, in Indiana, in Missouri, and here in Wisconsin. A small town comes to life with new projects. A housing development for older citizens. A revitalized downtown. An attitude of lively progress. A sturdy Wisconsin farm family, in partnership with their government, build 3 failing properties into a thriving dairy farm. A forest and a lake are opened up for the pleasure of the people in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. As I listened to the young leaders who opened the program today, I marveled a moment at the continuing vitality of America, and I wondered, what is it that makes it so?
On her flight home, the First Lady realized she had spent the previous 4 days experiencing the answer.
We're not just a nation of city dwellers. Our small towns and our farms still account for much of the nation's vitality and offer hope for the world.